Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And I wanted to make this video this evening as we head into another week. And we got earnings weeks. This is earnings week, so stay tuned for those updates. We got Verizon and AT&T this week. T-Mobile is not reporting their quarterly earnings until August 5th. So we got to wait a little bit longer for them. But what I wanted to discuss, and you can see by the article, Ookla confirms T-Mobile is top carrier for fastest 5G speeds, and then most available network on the 5G side. Now, there's several other third-party firms that release their reportings, OpenSignal, Root Metrics, and it's really good for everybody to look at all of them to kind of make your opinionated guess as to who you think is the best in your area or on a national scale or on a state level, to look at all of them. It's a really good way to make an informed decision on your end as the consumer. Now, Ookla, a lot of people have mixed feelings, and I've been told this over the last few years that, hey, it's all crowdsourced. There's customers and the fanboys, so to speak, that can just test a site that can do 200-300 megabits a second over and over and over again, and it would show the averages as lopsided. While that may be true, I'm sure that Ookla has a way of kind of filtering that out. I would hope so. But again, that's why you have the other third-party testing firms to make a more informed opinion. Now, Root Metrics, they still say that T-Mobile is not really competing with AT&T and Verizon, which on the product side, the network, that's the competition that they face. And from what I've been told, the reason Root Metrics scores T-Mobile as low as they do is because T-Mobile is still not there yet on a national scale, the grand scale. That's why they wanted the Sprint merger, so they can compete better with their product at a grand scale. We're going to start seeing that happening. Root has already reported that T-Mobile is improving at a national level, and that's just going to get better every quarter. There's a lot of work going on right now, a lot. So we got the Chantel deal. That integration will be ongoing. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen next year. This is going to be a tedious progress. Every quarter, every year, it'll get better. So we have the Chantel deal. We got the Swiftel deal. That's another integration. I'm not sure if they're fully finished even integrating the Iowa wireless deal. That's still ongoing. The Sprint, of course, the Sprint integration on a larger scale is also a part of all of this. So for several months and years now, many people have been questioning that, is T-Mobile spending enough money to make all of this a reality in a timely manner? So they're doing 12 billion this year. They're going to do 12 next year, which is 24 billion over 2 years. That's a pretty significant amount for T-Mobile. It's not, of course, it's not anywhere close to what the competition is spending, but for T-Mobile, that's a pretty significant chunk of money. And then it drops to that $9 to $10 billion mark, which the CapEx was lowered on an internal basis. The original guidance set out was 9 to 12 billion. So they left themselves a bigger gap. And I think they should have kept it at that, because they could have easily spent 10, 11, maybe 9 if needed, and then 12 if they were able to get more work done within that annual year. But they decided to give the guidance 23 and beyond that they would be very disciplined on spending that 9 to 10 billion. And they said that is sufficient enough amounts of money. Take a step back. I want everybody to take a step back and kind of think maybe it is enough for T-Mobile. T-Mobile is not a hugely ran company in terms of bigger assets. And what I mean by that is they're not running their own fiber. They're not doing anything on those terms. So there isn't any additional capital needed to fund any of that. They're literally funding the a portion of the Sprint grid, which is about 12 to 13,000 sites that they want to keep. So they're funding a portion of the Sprint grid, which Sprint really didn't, at least earlier on in the LTE era, and then as they got more aggressive on Band 41, Sprint was spending 2 to 3 billion during those times, and then at the later parts before the merger got approved, they started spending 5 to 6 billion. So T-Mobile is spending a portion of their capex on that, and then the rest is all going to the macro grid for now. They're not really heavily involved in small cells, which people consider that to be a backdrop. Maybe if they did spend that 13 to 14 billion dollar range, they could kind of do both in terms of the supplying the macro grid with the upgrades and the new macros, and then also deploying small cells at the same time. That may be a possibility, but I think there may be a time now where we could say, look, a lot of people are saying that what they have done with that N41 rollout with the limited resources is incredible. I really don't see it as a limited resource. They're still spending $12 billion this year. Is it as much as AT&T and Verizon? No, but AT&T and Verizon have other spendings that they have to invest towards. Fiber is a good chunk of money that they have to invest in, which is could be easily between, I would say, a number of $3 to 6 billion, anywhere between that range, what both of them are spending on the own fiber. Now, again, owner economics come into play on that part. That's part of operational expenses. That's a topic for another video. But T-Mobile is not doing that. Is that a negative towards the company? Maybe T-Mobile is not really realizing the owner economics on this, and that could potentially backfire in a future like scenario. But again, T-Mobile is a very well disciplined company, and they're stating that it's enough. The leasing is fine. So if they're saying that the leasing model works for them, then so be it. If they're saying that, then they've done their homework. They've calculated all the numbers behind the scenes. And if they say that, the operations expense is there for them to invest in the fiber, then that's fine. Maybe their fiber backhaul on the top end won't be as high as AT&T and Verizon. While that's fine. The consumer itself won't see a difference or notice a difference from T-Mobile getting 400 megabits and Verizon doing a gig. They're not going to know the difference on a day-to-day basis. They won't know the difference. They just won't. Same with the millimeter wave. The regular consumer won't know that they're getting 3 gigs at this point in time, other than maybe they realize, hey, it says 5G ultra wideband at the top of my phone. That might be the only time where they're like, oh, something's going on. But other than that, they won't notice the difference. They just won't. So maybe, T-Mobile's like, hey, look, we're going to lease our fiber. We're going to push it to this amount of backhaul according to the agreement I have with my third party, and I'm not going an additional gig above that backhaul limit that I have on my sites. If that means that they may be a little slower in the in the 5G era, then so be it. But their balance sheet will still be less overall, so they can compete better in the market space without having to worry about margins and everything else like AT&T and Verizon, and still take customers in a big way. So I think that's how T-Mobile is strategically looking at this rollout. There's a lot of work going on. If you saw my video recently on Twitter, you saw the boom lift, the equipment. There's like 5-6 upgrades going on simultaneously in the entire city. And I'm finding out now that some of the Sprint conversions are happening too, where they're going to the Sprint site and they're upgrading it to the T-Mobile equipment. So if they're able to achieve all that within the CapEx allotment that they have currently, that's a pretty big goal, achieved goal from theirs. Each year, as we head into 22, that unlocks a whole nother 12 billion next year. That's a pretty decent amount of money. It's not, it's not pennies on the dollar. It's $12 billion that are being poured into the network, more than T-Mobile has ever spent as a standalone. And again, they're just funding a portion of the Sprint grid. Sprint spent, like I said, 5-6 billion on the entire grid. T-Mobile is funding a portion of it, so they may not have to necessarily take too much of the capex out for the Sprint grid. They can probably spend a decent amount of millions and be able to convert the Sprint sites over to T-Mobile equipment. And again, they're fairly aggressive on that too. They want to be done with that by the end of next year. They want to have all Sprint sites upgraded to T-Mobile equipment. So all of this is happening with, like they stated, the capex that they have guided, which will also include C-band. According to them, also the layer cake, the millimeter wave, is also being deployed. Maybe not on the C-RAN that we're used to seeing from Verizon and AT&T, but heck, T-Mobile's deploying it. They're putting it on their macros. Are people a fan of the macro-based network? A lot of people are not, but those are tech enthusiasts that are into the wireless industry. They rather see the small cell pole go up. T-Mobile's like, our grid is dense enough, we can make it happen with the macro-based build. The consumer won't notice. The average consumer is like, they don't care if the millimeter wave is on the macro or on the small cell, as long as their phone works. That's all they care about. So I think that's the just to sum it up, that's the T-Mobile strategy. It's being backed by the third-party firms. Not so much Root Metrics, but Ookla, OpenSignal, they seem to be on board with T-Mobile's strategy. And T-Mobile is moving along just fine. As I mentioned, we're going to see more improvements this year. The next Root report, T-Mobile will likely be better at a national scale again. Next year, even better. The year after, even better. Each year, T-Mobile is going to make significant progress because their investments are showing proof. Will small cells come? Yes, maybe the bigger portions of the small cells are guided in the capex for 2023. And by that time, they'll have most of the sites integrated with the Sprint spectrum. Now they can focus on small cells. However they do it, it looks like it's enough and they're going to get it done. The coverage expansion into rural, that seems to be a huge focus. If there is a call for more capex because a certain business is really growing and they need to fund it, I think they'll spend more. They can spend more. Let the company grow organically. Let the profits come in. Let us see the home internet numbers on the next quarterly earnings. And if those numbers are big, then why not raise capex $1 billion or $2 billion? It won't hurt the bottom line because they're growing. Especially now that the VA is a huge priority on the military side. They're doing that. They're really big on trying to get these Fortune 500 businesses. I mean, they're working every single thing that they can to better the company. And although that won't happen overnight, as I mentioned, but man, each year to make that kind of a progress, that's a pretty big deal in my opinion. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. Look forward to reading all your comments. If you have been on the channel or you're new to the channel and you have not yet liked, share, subscribe, make sure you do so. Hit the notification bell so you are notified when I do upload content. Make sure to follow my social media outlets for more updates and interactions. Thanks again for watching. This is Tyrone with Tech Life, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.